Hello and welcome to another Brawl video. Today we're checking out Purphoros, God of the Forge, as voted on by my supporters on Patreon, and I decided to build it as a mono-red Goblins deck. Purphoros, a 4-mana 6/5, a legendary enchantment creature, god. It's indestructible, but only turns into a creature once we reach enough devotion to red, so we need 5 or more, and whenever another creature we control enters, Purphoros deals 2 damage to each opponent. So that's the ability we're really building around in this deck, as we've got lots of goblin token makers, which will trigger Purphoros multiple times to deal a ton of damage. And then we don't even need to attack to win the game in this deck, but once we do turn our team sideways, we can also pump up our creatures with 1 extra power for every 2 and a red mana we sink into Purphoros' ability. So let's take a look at the rest of our deck. I've split it up into a few different categories. The first one being mana acceleration, so we can potentially play Purphoros on turn 3 already and then start making tokens. And then a very large section of just goblin related cards, often making goblin tokens in the process as well. And then the miscellaneous section includes more cards that synergize with Purphoros. We've got a tiny bit of creature interaction as well, so that can round things out. So starting with our mana acceleration, at 2 mana, there's Arcane Signet, Cold Steel Heart, Guardian Idol, Mind Stone, now Ruby Medallion as well, Solar Transformer, and the Iron Crag. And then we've got Cursed Mirror, another recent addition, can potentially copy a creature that's in play for a turn. We've got Heraldic Banner, great in a go-wide deck, as we can pump up all our red creatures with it. And then Patchwork Banner, naming Goblin, also quite strong. And then we've got Caged Sun, which can essentially double up our mana if we name red, since we'll have plenty of red producing lands, and pump the team as well. And Immortal Sun, since we don't have any planeswalkers in the deck, we can shut them all down, give our team +1/+1, draw extra cards, and give our cards a 1 mana discount as well. Could also consider playing the new 5 mana banner from Foundations, but since this deck is mostly trying to win with Purphoros triggers, we don't need to dedicate too many more cards to pumping up our goblins. And then taking a look at our goblins, at 1 mana there's Fanatical Firebrand, also good for taking out opposing mana elves early on. Gleeful Demolition can occasionally destroy opposing artifacts just for 1 mana, but in the late game, if we no longer need some of our mana artifacts, we can blow them up just to make 3 goblin tokens, which is a very efficient rate. Goblin Bushwhacker is also new to Arena, so can play this with Kicker to give our team 1 extra power and haste until end of turn, so that can also help close things out. Prospector can sack goblins to make red mana, so that can be another way of ramping. We've got the Battlecry Goblin, which can make goblin tokens if we enable Pack Tactics if it attacks, and can also pay 1 and a red to give the team 1 extra power and haste until end of turn. Dragon Fodder is just 2 goblin tokens for 2 mana. We've got a few of those effects, including a Krenko's Command, another sorcery. Then the Crater Maker can be sacrificed to deal 2 damage, or destroy a colorless non-land permanent, so it can blow up artifacts for instance. The Instigator, another 1 mana goblin that makes another 1/1 token, so similar to the 2 mana sorceries, although it does provide 1 devotion, so it's a little bit better since it can maybe enable Purphoros. Then there's the Horde Master, pumping up our goblins. If goblins die, we get to exile the top card of our library until next turn. We've got the new Seer Slicer Goblin that can make tokens with a raid, so it can be another source of extra tokens to trigger Purphoros. The Snoop can help play goblins off the top of the deck while providing 2 devotion. There's Ember Hauler, which can be sacked for 2 damage to any target. Moria Marauder can also provide lots of card advantage if our goblins manage to hit the opponent. And then Wily Goblin makes a treasure when it enters, also good for 2 devotion. Then at 3 mana, cannot go wrong with Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, which also makes goblins, so perfect in this deck. The Incinerator gives us some more removal, which we can cycle to deal damage equal to the number of goblins we control, while drawing a card as well. Then the new Boltbringer can make additional goblin tokens if we attack, as well as dealing additional damage. The Goblin Matron can find any goblin in our deck and put it in hand, so often going for Krenko to spew out even more goblin tokens. There's the Rabble Master, also a recent addition from Pioneer Masters, making additional tokens, although it does force all our goblins to attack, so that can sometimes be a double-edged sword. Then there's a Goblin Surprise, making 2 1/1s at instant speed, but can also pump the team. 3 mana Krenko is not the one we're going to find with Matron, but can still be pretty good, especially if we can attack with it right away, giving it extra +1 counters and making additional goblin tokens. Legion Warboss will make a 1/1 every turn as well. We've got the Pashalik Mons, which can deal damage when our goblins die, also quite good in combination with a card like the Prospector, which can sack our goblins for mana. Then we've got the Bushwhacker number 2 here, also a recent addition from Pioneer Masters, so it can also surge it to give our team 1 extra power and haste until end of turn. Squee makes an extra Goblin token when it attacks. We've got the Chieftain giving the team +1/+1 and haste, especially good with 4 mana Krenko. Goblin War Chief will discount all our goblins by 1 while giving them haste. Then there's the Bandit Lord, another Anthem effect giving the team +1/+1, but can also activate, dealing damage. The Outburst makes 3 Goblin tokens for 3 mana, so also quite efficient. The Chain Whirler's excellent, providing plenty of devotion, but also dealing 1 damage to opposing creatures and planeswalkers when it enters. And then the Mog Mob can be sacrificed, dividing 3 damage among 1, 2, or 3 targets. Then moving up the curve at 4 mana, there's Beetlebank Chief, which is essentially the same as the Goblin Gang Leader, making 2 1/1 tokens when it enters. This is the only card that's not available in paper. Krenko Mob Boss is what I was talking about, can tap, making a 1/1 Goblin token for each Goblin we control, so it can very quickly get out of hand and maybe even just win the game with a single activation if we control Purphoros. The Goblin Rally for 5 mana makes 4 1/1 Goblin tokens. Siege Gang Commander makes 3 tokens and can also sacrifice goblins to deal 2 damage to any target. We've got the Eldrazi version of it. This one's devoid, but still provides 2 devotion for Purphoros. And then a Muxus can be awesome if we hit some goblins off the ability when it enters. And finally, Goblin Negotiation is removal that can also maybe leave some goblin tokens behind. And then the miscellaneous section has a Lightning Bolt as cheap interaction. We've got a Braid, can destroy artifacts as well. Bombardment, a way to sacrifice goblins to at least deal 1 damage on the way out. Impact Tremors is kind of like the baby version of Purphoros for 2 mana. And then Blood Moon, a way to punish opposing non-basic lands. We've got Panharmonicon, doubling the triggers from Purphoros and some of our other creatures. And then a City on Fire, we can convoke tapping some of our creatures, tripling our damage output from some of our sources, including Purphoros, so now every trigger is good for 6 damage instead. And then our mana base is mostly mountains, also have Arena of Glory, good to give some of our goblins haste, especially nice with various Krenkos. We've got Castle Ambreth to pump the team in case we don't have Purphoros available somehow. And then a Den of the Bugbear can also turn into a goblin, making additional goblin tokens. And Crucible can be channeled, making 2 1/1 tokens. And then both Nykthos as well as 3 Tree City can also give us a burst of extra mana, which can also come in handy. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Minsc and Boo. A very powerful Planeswalker. Opponent's gonna probably try and ramp into it. And then, yeah, especially the -2 can be great for dealing with multiple creatures. This hand could use more mana. I don't think a Krenko even on turn 2 of a Prospector is likely to stick around. They will have some burn spells. So then this hand may fall apart pretty quickly, even though a Lightning Bolt is good to have. This might be better. And then we've got Arena plus Krenko, which is kind of a nice combo. But also just Cold Steel Heart, setting up turn 3 Purphoros. And with our tokens we could convoke a City of Fire, which can do a lot of damage. And then red-green should not have answers to Purphoros. Curator can keep graveyards clean. Might eventually demolition our own Cold Steel Heart to make some tokens. Take 3. Alright, no play from our opponents. So if they're sitting on removal, Purphoros seems like the perfect play. Curator activates. Now the Den will enter tapped, but still fine alongside maybe a Beetlebank Chief, setting up our City on Fire. Now Burning Tree makes 2 mana for Ruby, which can immediately tap for mana. So next turn we are definitely going to see Minsc and Boo. And yeah, they could sack a creature. At least they cannot divide the damage. So we'll see. Now Iron Crag is also an option alongside Krenko, but opponent's got 2 mana up, so hasty Krenko still seems pretty risky, since then my arena's going to be tapped next turn. So we'll keep it simple. Play Beetlebank. And a Den. And then here's hoping we can convoke a City on Fire soon. Could play Instigator. 5, 6, 7, 8, and then still convoke City. And then Krenko with haste on the following turn, plus Demolition could get the job done. But that's assuming no interaction. So there's Minsc and Boo. Gets a Boo token. Puts counters on it. And attacks. So yeah, probably gonna take it here if we want to convoke our city. So we fall to 11. A land was useful. So now what I can do is Instigator into Convoke City, and then still Demolition, the Cold Steel Heart, with City on Fire already on the battlefields. So just making sure we do this properly. And then Demolition, Cold Steel Hearts. 3 tokens. 6 damage each, and that's game. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Nissa. Blood Moon's probably not going to be at its best, even though it can stop fetch lines from working. My hand's a little clunky, it feels. Alright, this is better. We're missing a 2-mana ramp card to play Purphoros on 3. But at least we've got some removal. Alright, Sanctuary can draw the opponent cards if we try to remove their stuff. We don't actually have a whole lot of interaction. Spell or ability, so that also includes the cycling from Incinerator, which is still an ability. We drew a bunch of expensive 6-mana artifacts. But yeah, next turn with Warboss we can go on the Beatdown plan. 3/3 City can maybe generate a burst of extra mana eventually. Augur is next, so that can block the Goblin tokens. May as well attack all out since we're getting a 1/1 from Warboss. Instigator is the more valuable card in a way, since it provides a devotion, so that's what they'll block. So next turn, play Purphoros. Unless we want to desperately take out Nissa or the Augur here. Nissa will find Elf or Elemental. It's going to be Elvish Mystic. So yeah, they're doing a nice job of ramping. We're just playing Purphoros, dealing 2 damage, and then now it's no longer worth it to send in everyone. And Generous End cycled for a forest. The Woodland can also eventually activate here. Nissa triggers again. And again. Finding Springbloom Druid as their elf. Can provide extra landfall triggers. So our opponent's already more than doubled the mana we have. So yeah, we're a bit behind. And an interesting attack. Don't really want to trade Warboss for Augur. Ooh, Chain Whirler, that was a pretty brutal top deck. So we can go to attackers. I don't think our opponent's necessarily trading. Although, let's see. If I play Chain Whirler, we do enable Purphoros as well. I was just trying to see if I could maybe deploy a 3/3 city this turn after making a token. It would give us an extra mana to play a 6-drop. But I think just playing Chain Whirler is good enough here. And then I could still maybe cycle Incinerator. And attack. And then I think it's fine to take out Nissa now. Could maybe play the city in case we draw another beneficial land next turn, like Nykthos. Yeah, this might slow them down just a bit. Alright, and then Demolition probably not going to be used. Could blow up my own 6-drop, I guess, just to trigger Purphoros. And yeah, opponent at 4 life scoops it up, so can ramp all you want, but Chain Whirler's gonna get you. Okay, we're on the play, facing Kellan, so mono-red aggro. It's not like our deck is packing a ton of removal. We are on the play. Impact Tremors into Legion Warboss into Purphoros could be a solid curve. Chieftain to pump the team. So we do have some okay tools, although we're gonna be probably on the back foot if our opponent built their deck to be particularly aggressive. So maybe I do look for a bit of interaction or some ramp to play turn 3 Purphoros. Yeah, let's take a mulligan. Alright, Firebrand counts. Get in for 1. If they play Kellan, I have a blocker plus something to deal damage at instant speed. Don't have to take it out now. And then Snoop. I maybe want to wait until I can play Goblins of the Top right away if I have the mana for it. So let's try Battlecry Goblin maybe. Since Ember Hauler is also better if I can immediately sacrifice it. Don't know if our opponent's playing pump spells. Amped Raptor. So they must have a pretty low curve if they're playing the Raptor. And Sling Fire, they're not going to be able to cast now. Alright, I guess we'll block with Firebrand, shoot the Raptor. Since First Strike is pretty annoying. Transformer at least guarantees that I can play Purphoros next turn. Yeah, maybe that's okay. And then we'll hit for 2. And then Purphoros into Goblin Rally is looking good. Opponent's got a dashed Ragavan, so we'll make a treasure. And the Chieftain they won't be able to play. And the Rahilda is next. Somewhat similar to Ragavan. So if I go for Purphoros, I won't necessarily have a great block, so we could switch gears again, and then go Snoop, Ember Hauler, activate Ember Hauler perhaps. See what's on top first. Squee, that's pretty tempting now. Even though I wouldn't be able to attack with it. We'll get our value. And then I could double block Rahilda to trade, but we know a land's on top anyway. I guess it exiles a non-land at random, so it's a bit different from Ragavan in that regard. Opponent takes out the Snoop. Damage cannot be prevented. And yeah, double block on Rahilda's risky if they have 1 mana removal. Might still be worth it, even though Ember Hauler trades for Rahilda. Both of my creatures are about equally valuable, I think, with Goblin Rally coming up. So the trade happens. And then now I could go Purphoros plus Ember Hauler. And Squeak can attack. Opponent's gonna take the trade. Alright, 2 more damage, and now Goblin Rally is 8 damage. And then Purphoros can keep pumping the team as well. Fury will clean up nicely, but at least they didn't have it as an answer to the Goblin Rally. But they do get to keep it in play. So yeah, it's still going to be close. We can bring back Squee next turn as well. So that plus a Purphoros activation might do it. And our opponent's pretty much tapped out now. So I should be able to just take it. So we're at 5. And a Lavamancer in the follow-up. Alright, now Siege Gang Commander makes it even easier, but I kind of want to stick to the original plan. And then we want to make sure to attack first and then pump. Alright, and there we have it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing the Jolly Balloon Man, so we'll have lots of enter the battlefield abilities they can abuse. This hand is mostly hoping Muxus hits it big. We're on the play with a banner. Yeah, I'll try it. We shouldn't face a ton of removal, so Hordemaster has a chance to survive. Now the Goblin might get things going as well. Although can expect some cheaper creatures that cantrip. Just gonna be a Signet. And a 1-mana answer, Lightning Bolt. Okay. Play Banner. And our opponent's probably gonna wait on Balloon Man until they have something to target. Mondrak can double the balloon tokens as well. So probably fine to play Purphoros. And then hope for another land to enable Muxus next turn. If not, we have some other token makers to trigger Purphoros. Now white can have answers to indestructible enchantments, so it's not guaranteed to stick around. Recruiter can maybe find some more answers. Could also get Solemnity, which can exile Purphoros if it turns into a creature. And goes for Ragavan instead. Okay. And Prospector doesn't quite let me play Muxus. But I guess going for either Rally or Siege Gang can set it up for next turn. So what makes more sense? Maybe the Goblin Rally for now. Even though Siege Gang blocks Recruiter profitably. Yeah, I guess we can try that. So we've got some good damage outputs. At least Recruiter cannot get Fury, which is a bit more effective against the tokens deck. So Balloon Man, activate on Recruiter, I imagine. And we'll see what they search up here. 2 triggers, thanks to Mondrak. And it's going to be Ocelot Pride, also quite good with the Balloon Man. I believe I forgot to include this in my build when I featured it a while ago. But the deck list in the description of that video should be updated to include Ocelot Pride. And then Witch Enchanter, since they were maybe missing a land drop for a turn. At least Ocelots cost them an extra mana, so they can't quite play it here. They're going to activate Mondrak, sacking the 2 tokens before they go away, so it can become indestructible. That's fine. Opponent falls to 8, so now they're kind of just dead to a Goblin Rally. But let's have some fun. Give up the guaranteed lethal in order to spin the wheel with Muxus. And we just found a Krenko, so a good card, but opponent's still at 2, but now we can just sacrifice 2 more creatures. If our opponent had a Solemnity, they actually could have tried to punish us, although I guess I could have sacked enough Devotion with Prospector in response. But yeah, now we can just play any all 2-mana Goblin, trigger Purphoros, and win the game. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. We are facing Davriel, so mono black. And sure, we can keep this. Wily Goblin's pretty nice with Nykthos, providing additional devotion. Although Inquisition's gonna try and punch a hole in our game plan. And they do take the Wily Goblin after all. So no turn 3 Purphoros, but we've got other decent turn 3 plays available. Don't mind taking out the Mind Stone, so that's probably why they were maybe debating taking the Abrade. And then Spawn Gang, despite being devoid, still contributes to devotion for Nykthos and Purphoros. Opponent's got another Signet, stuck on 2 lands. Alright, seems like a good opportunity for Squee to get an attack in. And now we could see Davriel. It's going to -2. So this could be all sorts of effects. Alright, so our opponent got an emblem saying at the beginning of their upkeep they lose a life for each creature they control. Whenever they draw a card, they gain 2 life. Fair enough. This turn, if I go Battle Cry, activate, it gains haste, and then we should also get an extra Pack Tactics trigger. Yeah, that seems decent to me. Finish off Davriel.
Fine. I'll just have all the tea.
And then now Purphoros can potentially go to town. A Cursed Marauder making me sack a non-token. Alright, in that case, I guess Battle Cry is more valuable now. Although it's not going to make a token next turn yet, if I tap out for Purphoros, that is. So maybe Squeeze still better. And then cannot quite double spell if I want to play Purphoros. Opponent's at 8. And gains 2 up to 10. And now a Liliana, Waker of the Dead. Can take out Squee.
Queen of the Dead, please.
If I activate Purphoros, I can pump my team. That's not quite lethal. What does Pashalik do again? If my creatures die, we deal damage. So I can go Medallion plus Pashalik. And then next turn we should have it. If they wipe my board, they take 5 damage. Shadow's Verdict exiles. Alright, never mind, they found a way around it. But we have a Spawn Gang Commander, which is still good here. Trigger Purphoros 3 times. And once more. And there we have it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, facing the Boltbringer, so another Goblins deck perhaps. Mog Mob should be decent. Bombardment, also an answer to opposing Goblins if we can generate enough in the first place. The problem here is maybe a lack of token makers for Purphoros. And we might not find a third land. Close one. I think I mulligan. Alright, this is a bit more exciting. No 2-drop, but some good 3-drops to choose from. And a Crater Maker could blow up our artifacts as well. And a Scamp. And a Bushwhacker kicked, so that's a lot of damage. Now at least Mog Mob can take out a bunch of their 1 toughness creatures. So can maybe block Crater Maker and then still activate. O'Hare Ashonil. So let's see. If a Red Source deals a non-combat damage, so if I take out Scamp it would deal 4. Alright, so better to take it out now then. And yeah, that's pretty good with Boltbringer as well. Could also play it alongside Purphoros, but it's yet another 4-drop. So this turn we're looking at maybe Banner into Fodder. But I might just die here. I didn't quite get enough time to set up. So I can block 1 of each, or we could double block O'Hare. Maybe I do double block, take 3. This turns into a land, and it's gonna be a while before they can activate again. Although now they could sack Crater Maker, and yeah, then the double block's not gonna work. So I guess it is forced to block like this. They could still sack Crater Maker, destroy the banner, to set us back on mana. Then we keep a Goblin. So we're at 4. And yeah, don't have any amazing options. Can make 4 goblins. And then our opponent's gonna attack, trigger, dealing now 4 damage, and that's game over. Alright, it's too bad. Had a decent setup here with City on Fire to convoke next turn. But O'Hare a little bit too strong. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Azusa, mono green ramp, so they're not gonna have too much interaction. This hand's got potential. Wily Goblin and Mog Mob, providing a ton of devotion for Nykthos. Might have to use the treasure to play the mob in the first place. Turn 1 Utopia Sprawl, can play turn 2 Azusa. But I'll be able to play the mob at least. And then yeah, 5 devotion, so this is already plus 2 mana. There's Azusa. And 2 more land drops available. Seiju and Fountain to gain 2. And a Sylvan Scrying can get a land for next turn. The fact that they played Boseiju sort of implies that they may not have a lot of other lands in hand. But Archway as a bounce land is nice, since they can make use of Azusa's ability. But don't really want to sack the mob. It's going to be a tribute for starters. Can draw them extra cards. So our opponent can pick up Fountain, replay it, gain 2 more. Goes for Boseiju instead. So that can maybe blow up Nykthos after a single use. Nope, opponent plays it anyway. So might have been better off gaining 2 extra life then. And Solemn. Okay, opponent's down to 1 card in hand. Sometimes a problem with Azusa decks is that they ram very quickly early on, but then are maybe lacking a Curve Topper. But if our opponent's got an Eldrazi left in hand, we could still be in trouble, of course. Okay, so Nykthos can activate. And then that's enough to play Purphoros and the General. And then if I attack with Wily Goblin, I will lose it, even though it triggers the General. Is that worth it? Could also finish off Solemn with a mob, but it's not all that appealing to me. And I think I'll just sit back. And then next turn Purphoros can attack. Rally makes a bunch more tokens. And can also activate Purphoros to pump the team. So our opponent is empty-handed. So they are just top decking. And we've got a few more goodies in hand. So play a Rally. Get a bunch of triggers. Banner names Goblin. And do we attack all out yet? Can certainly send him Purphoros. Opponent's happy to chump with a Solemn to draw. If everything else attacks, then Azusa can chump as well. Have to be careful that I don't sack the mob and lose my devotion for Purphoros. Yeah, it's probably fine to just play it conservatively. And then next turn we should have a lethal one way or another. Could have also not attacked with Purphoros, so we give them fewer draw steps. In case they top deck some Eldrazi. But it looks like our opponent couldn't find an answer. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Djeru and Hazoret, so red-white, a legend aggro. This hand's a little slow. All our ramp is 3 mana. So I think we'll take a mulligan on that. This time we have some 3-mana goblins. Matron plus War Chief is kind of nice. Alright, we'll try it. And then we can maybe get Krenko at 4 mana. Basilisk Collar can give Death Touch and Lifelink. And it's going to be a Magdaln too, very strong. And we don't have any play besides Cycle Incinerator without dealing damage, so not an ideal start. Opponent equips Magda, so could have been worse. Now the question is, do we play the Matron just to have a blocker for Magda, or do we try War Chief? War Chief could be better if we can immediately cast something alongside it with a discount, but that's not going to be the case until maybe turn 5. So maybe it is still War Chief, hope it survives, and then next turn we can play 2 more goblins. Is our opponent missing a 3rd land, but getting ahead on treasures. Kemba is next, can move the equipment to it. So it might be more of an equipment deck. Demolition, an answer to the Collar, potentially. Although I think it's still fine to play the Matron. And search up Krenko. Which is quite strong with haste especially. So Squee doesn't have the best attack. Can Incinerator for 2 damage to take out Magda. We'll maybe sit on that. Since I also just want to draw an extra land here. Opponent moves to attackers. Do this now. Ooh, a Siege Smash. Was not expecting that one. Still get to draw at least, and Matron can still trade for Magda. But they will get another treasure out of it. Yeah, maybe not worth it to trade the Matron since we want more goblins for Krenko. Now Firebrand also an answer. So we have options. Yeah, Krenko's gotta be the priority. And then Magda's getting a little scary with 3 treasures in play already. So maybe we'll go Firebrand into Krenko, activates. Alright, March is gonna exile War Chief, so Krenko doesn't have haste. That's too bad. Still probably fine to take out Magda, and then I could take out the Collar as well. Or maybe even the Treasure. Hard to say which one's more relevant. Yeah, might be the Collar still. And then... do I take out Magda now? I think I maybe wait. Because more goblins is good to have. And I could just block Magda profitably with Krenko, technically. Alright, Tajik can prevent non-combat damage dealt to other creatures. And can also mentor onto Magda. So I probably need to respond now. So does Krenko get to untap is a question. For now, take 6. Alright, we got to untap. So now I could already play Caged Sun. I think I'm better off just maximizing my Goblin tokens with Squee and Goblin Surprise. Squee can attack. And then an unchecked Krenko can take over very quickly. Do I want to surprise now? I don't think our opponent's playing any board wipes. So I'll maybe do it now. And then we'll immediately activate Krenko, sure. So next turn Purphoros is lethal if we activate Krenko. And if they deal with Krenko, Caged Sun is not a bad follow-up. They can play Djeru and Hazoret, but it's not gonna have haste yet. Their opponent attacks. Can play it safe. Could even double block Tajik. Since we should have plenty of damage to spare if Krenko gets to untap. If they want to give first strike, that's 2 mana gone. So the trade happened. And Fury, alright, so not quite a sweeper, but it is a nice answer to Krenko. And a Goblin token. So Purphoros not quite going to be as deadly now. Can still play a Caged Sun, which, yeah, should still be lethal here. Attack all out, make an extra Goblin, they can block Squee and take 14. Alright. I'll take it, even without our commander. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, facing Yorion. And our hand is missing a token maker. So City on Fire is also not going to be all that helpful without it. So we'll mulligan. This seems fine. Probably waiting to kick the Bushwhacker. And then Krenko with the Arena of Glory is kind of exciting. So we might try that out. Although it does mean skipping Purphoros on 4. Opponent's got 2 mana up for Ironcrag. So the coast is technically clear for Krenko to attack with haste. Yeah, you know what? Let's try it. And then next turn I can just play a kick Bushwhacker. And wow, our opponent explodes. I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw, facing Tasigur, so a Sultai Delve mid-range deck perhaps. Our hand seems fine. Blood Moon could be effective if they're playing 3 colors. Already with a non-basic. And Kami, alright, has an island, so at least they'll have access to blue mana. If we don't think Blood Moon is going to be good, we can discard it to the Fable, so that's not too bad. And now another island, still missing black mana for Tasigur. Their graveyard's also not very full. And now Cold Steel Heart can name black. Alright, so Blood Moon's not particularly exciting here. Do we want to play a double striking Marauder? Still gonna struggle to attack into a Tasigur next turn. So may as well play a Signet. And then next turn we could already present Purphoros. They've got a fetch land now. So we should see Tasigur. Nope, opponent keeps up a bunch of mana, so possible they have counter spells instead. Although now a Braid gives us some more flexibility. So let's maybe start with Ironcrag. And then if that resolves, we could try Fable, or we could Abrade Cold Steel Hearts. Then our opponent's forced to fetch black with Wooded Foothills, which kind of plays into our Blood Moon a little bit. Can maybe wait until upkeep. Opponent's gonna fetch now. So if they don't get black mana, we could punish them. Alright, did it get a Mortuary? Can Surveil, filling the graveyard for Delve. And then I guess we'll wait until their upkeep to Abrade. In case they had a counterspell, they'll have to spend mana in their turn. But before they can make mana for casting Tasigur. Because their opponents may be trying to play Tasigur and keep up interaction at the same time. Now we can double spell. Marauder could be decent. And then we still have Fable as a follow-up. Don't think it's a Purphoros turn since it doesn't spend all our mana. I'll try Fable. That also resolves. So their opponent not doing a whole lot when they had plenty of opportunities to play Tasigur. Now Prowler can mill some more. Flare of Malice going to the graveyard. And our opponent's got 3 mana up once again. So yeah, Blood Moon's not all that exciting since they still have green from the elves. So it would only shut down their black mana. Could still be okay, actually. So do I just keep everything? And this turn we can double spell Warboss Blood Moon. Start with a Blood Moon. That's resolved. Okay, and then Warboss is next. I'll send in the Shaman. Marauder triggers. Probably won't be able to play the card. Goblin Rally will go to waste. Alright, but now we're in a position to play Purphoros and start making tokens. Alright, never mind. Terra Sunder, an answer to the Blood Moon. Would have been the perfect answer to Purphoros as well, since it exiles enchantments. So, in a way, Blood Moon kind of took one for the team. And now I'm sure we'll see Tasigur. Maybe with counterspell backup. Yeah, put on making sure to leave up double blue. So it could be just counterspell, could be even worse potentially if they have mana drain. So what's our best approach? Yeah, I mean if Purphoros gets countered I can still replay it next turn. Don't have any amazing attacks anymore. Still seems worth a try. And it's going to be Subtlety instead, alright, so they did have to pitch an extra card for that. And then Purphoros can stay on top. So I don't have to pay the tax. Does mean I don't wanna... opponent could actually do something funny here, which is letting the token hit them so that we exile Purphoros, but then we can still send it back to the command zone. Opponent's gonna block anyway. And I'll keep Instigator in hand to trigger Purphoros, I think. So our opponent's got just Subtlety, Bauble, and Binding in the graveyard. So if they activate Tasigur, we can give them a Bauble, for instance. And now Reflection of Kiki Jiki is active as well. So let's try that again. Resolves. Ironcrag stays producing mana. And then Can maybe activate on the war boss. And get some triggers. I can attack, and then maybe second main instigator, leaving the Purphoros activation, as well as maybe the Marauder to play cards off the top. So these have to attack. This one is going to go away. And sure, we can maybe send in some extra creatures as well. Don't think I lose the war boss just yet. So they've got one profitable block. The rest would be a trade if we activate Purphoros. Their opponent's not even blocking with Tasigur, so damage happens. They're going to activate Tasigur now. And I think just give them Bauble, could also give them a Sylvan Tutor, which is probably going to be a little slow to get going. But let's just give them a Bauble. And then we'll trigger the Marauder. And Bushwhacker's a little awkward here. So it might be better off with the Instigator then. And then keep the treasures for next turn. Although Bushwhacker would put them to 2. So it's not that bad actually. Alright. Can our opponent recover? They cannot. Alright, so we got to see our Mono-Red Purphoros Goblins in action. And yeah, the deck seems pretty powerful and a lot of fun to play as well, which is always the most important thing. But there's a lot of ways to build a Purphoros deck. You don't necessarily have to go with a Goblin approach, but it's been a while since we've played Goblins, and yeah, I've definitely had fun playing it. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.